Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mic'd Avengers podcast, where we focus on martial arts and action cinema, but definitely delve into much more. My name is Jason from Martial Arts Theater 3000. I've been a lifelong fan of martial arts movies from Bruce Lee to the Venom Mob, Bruceploitation, and everything in between.
My name's Dragon, aka the Fanatical Dragon on YouTube. I also write the Blu-ray reviews for Eastern Heroes magazine right here in the UK. I'm about 4 decades into this love affair with East Asian cinema, specifically action cinema. Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan and the Shaw brothers got me into Hong Kong films, but unlike my buddy Jason, I've seen a whole bunch of Japanese, Indonesian and South Korean action flicks too. So over the coming episodes, every so often, we're going to force feed him something he has not seen.
And I'm Shaun, also known as Foo for Thought. It all started for me at the tender age of 14, where I discovered Jackie Chan's Drunken Master. From there, I kind of delved into old school Kung Fu, and that has been my passion for 30 plus years now. I also started delving into all realms of Asian cinema, and I'm very happy to say that these days I have a pretty strong passion for kind of dark Korean thrillers. If you like what you hear and you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a like, share and subscribe. And please enjoy this episode of the Mic'd Avengers.
Greetings one and all, and welcome to episode 7 of the Mic'd Avengers podcast. I'm the Fanatical Dragon, joined as always by my two dear friends and co-hosts, Jason from Martial Arts Theater 3000.
How's it going?
And Shaun from Foo for Thought.
Howdy, folks.
And today it's my absolute delight that we're diving into a Lau Gar-Lung movie. I think our first Lau Gar-Lung movie on the podcast so far.
Wow, that's shocking somehow.
Wait.
Is it? Yeah, because we kind of did Dirty Ho as like a get-together before, but we hadn't really started the podcast.
Drunken Master 2?
Yeah, that is true. I kind of forgot about that one. Shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not technically, but our first full-on solo directed Lau
Bonafide.
Gar-Lung movie.
Yes.
And our first Shaw Brothers Lau Gar-Lung movie,
Yes.
which is 1978's Heroes of the East, aka Shaolin Challenges Ninja, aka Challenge of the Ninja, aka Shaolin versus Ninja, aka Drunk Shaolin Challenges Ninja, or in Chinese, Zhonghua Jiangfu, literal meaning Chinese husband.
Chinese husband. Yeah, very simple.
And for those that are maybe not that familiar with the movie, or those who need a refresh, or those who just want to laugh at how bad internet synopsises are, IMDb tells us a Chinese man marries a Japanese martial artist and they begin to bicker over which country is the better martial arts. It reaches a point where he has to go against Japanese martial artists in different styles to prove who's the best, which is not bad. Google, on the other hand, says Liu is about to get married to a woman but doesn't strike the right chord with her family and challenges them that Chinese Kung Fu is far more superior than martial arts.
Oh, that's great. That's really good.
A tongue twister to say and not really an accurate indication of what's going on in the movie.
Not quite.
Right, it's like they didn't have a lot of space or something to put it, on the
I
box.
think it's just because it's AI doing those things. So maybe AI would write it better. I don't know. But all in all, just an incredible kind of martial arts movie / kung fu comedy / marital arts movie. I've heard
Wow.
people describing it as, which I kind of dig. Because
I do remember that, yeah.
It's good fun. And I think it's kind of one of 2 movies that Lau Gar-Lung made that kind of celebrate martial artists getting married. I mean, there's quite a big chunk of this in Executioners from Shaolin as well. Though that's more exploring the wedding night rituals through a martial arts lens. This is kind of more focused on cultural differences between Chinese and Japanese. But another Lau Gar-Lung movie where nobody dies. There's literally not a single death in the entire movie. I don't that I could spot anyone unless anyone died of natural causes off screen.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
No.
Spoiler, fake death, but
But gentlemen, I've been speaking too long already. So Jason, do you want to jump in first and tell us when you saw the movie first?
yes. I like a lot of these old school ones, I was living in New Jersey. Philly 57 was the channel coming from Philadelphia. I was at their whims, every Sunday I was so into it. The only time I would turn it off is whenever Kung Fu with David Carradine would come on. When I would see that desert, I'd be like, oh, I don't know. I just didn't like that show, anything about it. They occasionally would put that on Samurai Sunday, but this came on. It was called Challenge of the Ninja. And speaking of the titles, it's interesting because when we got to the Celestials, when a lot of us learned the real titles around that time, and for some reason, maybe because of the ninja craze too, I was going through in the mid 80s.
Yep.
I don't like the title Heroes of the East, which is weird. I just think it feels I don't know, I guess because I'm used to of course, like World Northel loves saying like challenge of the death and all these things, you know.
Yeah.
But something about Heroes of the East, even though it kind of makes sense with it, I mean, they're all Heroes of the East. It just didn't have that bite in the Challenge of the Ninja or Shaolin Challenges Ninja, which I think you guys knew it as. I think that's a perfect title, but I mean, the title is what it is, and it's changed later, though, you know. But so I knew it as Challenge of the Ninja, and we joke around how the top fives always, you know, recycle, and people have so many favorites, and we always say it. I have to say, this one hangs at the top, doesn't go down a lot. This is like almost, I can't almost say it, but it's like pretty much on most days my favorite kung fu movie of all time. And it has been, and it's been reigning there for a long time. I don't want to spoil, like, we're probably going to hit other ones, so I'll talk about them when we get to those on the podcast. But yeah, it's just, this has everything, and it has an element to it which it kind of shocks me, is that like Chang-Chi movies, I love the blood and guts, I love the heroic, like just insanity to it. This doesn't have that, and somehow I think that's why, like, I rank Karate Kid as one of the best martial arts movies ever. That, of course, doesn't have any death, is not violent, you know, and that, I think if you can make a movie have that much power and not do that, that's part of Lau Kar-leung's magic, you know, to be able to get there without the spear going through you 10 times, you know, which is entertaining. So I love that aspect. I love just the respect. And I think when I watched it when I was young, what it did for me is I don't want to. I did start to get from all these movies, I have to say, a bit of an anti-Japanese movie sentiment. You know, like I wouldn't say anti-Japanese for real. It wasn't like anything like that. It felt more like a football team type of thing. I felt like from watching Fist of Fury and all this stuff, I was like, yes, I'm into the Chinese kung fu movies. And to be honest, I wasn't seeing like Seven Samurai and all these things at my rental places, and they weren't putting those on there much. So it's not like I had much choice. But I think this is good because it actually gives respect more to the Japanese, you know, because especially the Bruceploitation ones, they're putting Hitler mustaches on it. It's just so, you know, it's so that end of the spectrum. It's just like, and when you're young, you're just like, oh, okay, these guys are like really bad, right? Like, you know what I mean? But I knew I knew because my Bible at the time, Rick Meyer's book, had the Japanese section in the back. I got it, but I felt like my team was the Chinese movies, you know. But this really gives so much respect to them. It shows it. I love everything about this. I love Lau Kar-leung's vision. I love the cinematography. Gordon Liu's amazing. The fight scenes are amazing. And this is one, and again, I've showed my mother this, I've showed friends it really, people that don't love kung fu movies can just really get into this one. I had my friend's girlfriend once, like, she didn't like the marital stuff at the beginning. She's like, let's try a different one. Like, it wasn't clicking, which I could get maybe if you're not in the mood for like a Kramer versus Kramer type of thing. Yeah. But there's something about the pacing. It's immaculate. Fight scenes are immaculate. I'll say more later. I'll try to shut up, but I could go on. This movie, man, like I said, on most days, my favorite kung fu movie ever.
Dope. Shaun?
I don't know how to follow that. So I first saw this movie, I remember back, I watched the documentary, The Best of Martial Arts, which is the documentary presented by John Saxon. I know in the US it's called something else, but I can't remember what the name is. But I watched Best of Martial Arts years ago when I first slightly got into Kung Fu films. And I remember there's the scene from Duel to the Death, where Casanova Wong is fighting the ninjas on the beach, the kite ninjas.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, from now on, I love ninjas. Like, ninjas are just, I need to find more ninjas, basically. So I went through like American Ninja and stuff like that, and I didn't love that. And then I came across this VHS, which was Shaolin Challenges Ninja. It had a picture of a ninja on the front. I think was that a Warner Brothers release?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. It has one guy upside down on the cover, right?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. So I scooped that up. I bought that. I took it home and I watched it. And I remember being lukewarm on it, I will say. But that's because it doesn't have enough ninjas. And I was looking for ninjas at the time. Years gone by now, I now watch it and I absolutely follow the same sentiment as Jason. If you need to get anyone into Kung Fu films, if you need to start someone with a first film where they'll sit down and truly enjoy everything that Kung Fu cinema has to offer, from the fights to the characters to the locations to the costumes to the whole Japanese versus Chinese thing that is found throughout Kung Fu cinema. This is the movie to do it. It's impeccable. It's easily one of the greatest Kung Fu films ever made. And I would agree with Jason in that it could be the all-time greatest. I love it. And I'm happy to say that my wife watched this one, adored it. She absolutely loved it. Out of all the podcast movies we've done, this is her favorite.
Killer.
Hey.
So she's a big Gordon Liu fan. She warmed to him quite early. And I don't know, this film just hits every single point, every single joy that's found in Kung Fu cinema is found in this film. And like you were saying, I think it's amazing that there's villains in this, but no one dies.
Mm-hmm.
And are they really villainous, or are they just honorable? I think it's like a clash of warriors more than a straight out bad guy versus good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, there's just something about this, and the cast is phenomenal. The cast is unbelievable. I mean, even in the cameos in this, you've got Lau Leung himself, you've got Norman Chu, Li Hoi Sang pops up, and I don't know. I just think it's Lau Leung doing what Lau Leung does perfectly, and I think he just put everything into this film, and it absolutely works. Some of the lead actress in this, which I've got to remember her name, Mizuno Yuka. She's not found in much. I looked her up, and she's quite good in this. I quite like her, but I have to warn everyone out there. I had a bit of a trip with this film. So I was online looking at the cast, and I thought, you know what?
I know where this is going.
I'll Google this Mizuno Yuka. Turns out there's a semi-successful porn star in Japan called Mizuno Yuka. And I just have to tell everyone this. This is the name of one of her films that I discovered.
Porn Invincible.
Oh, that's fucking great. I wish. No, this one's called This Stepson Wanted to Make His Stepmother His Own, so he fitted her with a chastity belt and introduced her to cum. That's the name of one of her films. So if you fancy that one, by all means, guys, have a look for that one. I'm sure it's on many websites out there.
That's a translation, I hope. My gosh.
That's an English translation.
Okay, I'm thinking this is a scroll of a title.
It's huge. And I didn't have to Google that, Google Translate it. It's actually listed in IMDb, of all places. There's that title, and there's another one that's equally as insane. So when Googling it, believe it or not, I think that's like the second result or something. But,
I heard that on a commentary, a slight disclaimer like that.
Yeah, so I had to go down a tiny rabbit hole of checking whether that was her or not.
Right.
I wasn't sure whether it was the girl from this. But
you got to watch just to make sure,
Exactly, or at least find stills.
We would be remiss if we didn't do our homework.
Exactly. Yeah. But alas, I did it in a very mature and adult way. I looked at the rest of this porn star's filmography, and I did not see Heroes of the East. So I worked out it's not her. I didn't go into a porn hole.
And I did hear
sounds horrible. A porn hole sounds disgusting. But
I did hear there's also to make matters worse, there's another actress with the name and like a modern pop star with her name too or something.
Yes.
There's like four people floating around.
Yeah.
And she's really great. She really just and the more as I'm older, you can see. And we'll talk about this more, and I want you to finish what you were saying, but the nuances of this, that's what's so great. The ability for them to play and be in that gray area for all of them, it's far away from like a bad silent film where everything hits you over the head with bad guy, good guy,
Yeah, it's got everything. I mean, if you really, really think about it, in the middle of this film, it has a very small training sequence where Gordon Liu learns drunken boxing from Lau Leung. And that is the essence of Kung Fu films. Every Kung Fu film has to have a training sequence. And this one fits it in this story that otherwise would not fit it in. It fits it in. I don't know. It's just great.
in an
Let me-
almost meta level of Beggar Soul, the actual Drunken Master movie Beggar Soul, then introducing Lau Ga Lung's Beggar Soul.
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Let me ask you, I'm sure Shaun or you guys might know this, but is there any other movie that has drunken kung fu and ninjas in it? I mean, that's rare. That's a hybrid.
That's a question. Answers in the comments below.
We gotta make we should make a script, a ninja that does drunken kung fu. That'd be
Well, this one, like Draken said, this one was called Drunk Shaolin versus Ninja or Challengers Ninja, right? They just threw in that drunk just because there's that one scene or two scenes where he uses
but the drunkenness makes sense because like Shaolin Rescuers, Venoms were getting in on it, and on the Jackie Chan aspect of it, and everyone was getting on the kung fu, drunken kung fu craze. But this seems ahead of the curve for the ninja craze, because Enter the Ninja kind of really kicked it off for America. And of course there's the 60s ones with the shinobi with Omanomo. I say that often wrong, but yeah, it's just so he's kind of like definitely getting on the bandwagon of the drunken kung fu, but he's definitely kind of leading the way for the ninja craze, I'd have to say. Because in Shaw Brothers, you'll have a ninja come in and like steal something just as I wouldn't even call that a ninja. It's a Chinese person dressed up like in stealth. You'll see that in some of the early 70s ones and even 60s maybe. But yeah, this is like when they're really talking about it, and everything.
Yeah. And quite a few years ahead of Chang-Chi's, in a weird way, Chang-Chi's examination of some of the same sort of material, but in a wildly different way. Like Five Elements Ninjas is also the clash between Chinese and Japanese fighters. And to a certain extent, there's a little bit of that too in Bastard Swordsman 2. We get Ninja Clan and Bastard Swordsman 2 as well, right?
Release it, Arrow. Release it.
Yes,
we need it.
yes, we do. But
Dragon. I was gonna say, what's your history on it?
Weirdly, I never got the Warner's release of it. That I think Shaun, you would have picked up. That one I was never able to find. So the first time I got it was a bootleg release from the incredible Flashlegs Kung Fu in Clapham in London, which I'd kind of picked up a bunch of tapes when I was down there, and one of them was on the front of the box, Shaolin Challengers Ninja, and I'd heard about it before and I'd read about it before, but never had a chance to see it. And because the Warner's release came out at a time when all sorts of nunchaka related weapons were completely banned over here, that whole section with the 3-section staff and the ensuing fight was cut from the Warner's release, right, Shaun?
I think so.
If you remember, it wouldn't have been there when you first saw it.
That's a good point. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, after we got to talk about that later, all of that.
The bootleg that I got from Flashlegs had that intact, but it lifted it from, I think, a Spanish version of the movie. So it cuts on a line where it said, "What weapon will you use?" in the English dub, and then switches to Los Polos. And he pulls out like a 3-section staff. And then you see the whole section with him sort of basically going through the moves and then goes into the nunchaka fight. And that
was it a quality jump too? Did it like go to like
massively, like drop down like several grades. But it didn't matter at all. It was great. And in some ways the Los Polos just made it even better for my mates sitting around getting very stoned and watching that. This just became Los Polos became the line that everybody was easily able to replicate. So I absolutely loved it then, and just have loved it more and more as I've continued to see it over the years.
I agree.
And I finally got a chance to see the remastered version. That was just like seeing a whole new movie, because the bootleg had been so washed out. The colors looked so bad, right? And especially it's like one of the odd rare Shaw Brothers Lau Ga Lung movies that actually has a little bit of outside location in it. Like we actually get to see some stuff shot out, right? Which is so rare. Right. And even they go to Japan. There's some footage from Japan in the movie too, which is crazy as well. So some really, really nice location stuff, which all looked just really flat and washed out when I first saw it.
Okay.
When I saw that Celestial DVD, it was like, holy shit, this looks so good.
Luscious.
It's a movie that I don't think any other director could make. Like it's like this amazing amalgamation of all the things that we kind of think of as being Lau Ga Lung's strengths, where at its core it is essentially really a movie about the martial arts, which he always loved to kind of do. It examines kind of like differences in cultures without ever demonizing either one. The comedy hits home and works. Even some of the lesser characters that you wouldn't expect to kind of get an arc. Like normally the female characters, and I don't want to kind of sound like I'm anyway. The wife character normally in a Chang-Chi movie, she wouldn't make it to the end for starters.
No,
she wouldn't even be there half the time.
No, but she wouldn't really get that much to do. But here we kind of get somebody who, when you first meet her, she's not the most sympathetic of characters, right? She's not really presented as being that likable.
No.
But once you understand that a lot of what's going on and causing the friction between them is just kind of a lack of communication and cultural differences, that when they do actually get on board, because really the main villain in this is kind of misunderstanding more than it is the Japanese or the Chinese. Because the letter that he writes is really designed to be written to her. It's not a challenge to the Japanese martial artists. They read it that way. But as soon as his wife realizes, she's kind of then switches back in a way to help her husband and then starts feeding him information. So her whole role changes about halfway through the movie. And then she becomes...
Women, am I right?
Yeah, completely. But then she becomes this amazing, like, almost like that Hitchcock thing of seeing the bomb before it goes off. Instead of you just seeing the Japanese fighter for the first time when they're fighting, you get her saying, this is the style he uses, this is what you got to watch out for. And it kind of sets up each fight that you're about to go into with this extra level of anticipation, right? That's so good. And even her outfits change. Like, she starts dressing in Chinese clothing from halfway through the movie. And they kind of, the two of them, their relationship actually pretty sweet in the time that once they kind of get things together. And there's little bits that are good fun when she's sitting eating on the ground and he's like, only criminals eat on the ground. Criminals are about to be executed. And then she's flicking eggs at him. And that whole scene's really great. Like some of the sort of stuff that you'd see from the Yun clan of like that kind of playing around with everyday objects and kind of the way that he's kind of using the chair.
But on that note, you mentioned the Yun clan. I love that Lau Kar-leung keeps the comedy quite grounded in this. It's never too over the top. Or, like some people may watch something like, for example, we talk about a lot, but some people might watch something like Dirty Ho and think, oh, the comedy's a bit wild in this one. It's a bit too much, a bit goofy or whatever. In this one, it's legitimately good comedic just beats throughout the film, and it plays it very, very well, like a comedy rather than like this goofy, zany comedy. I don't know. It's just again.
I kind of get the sense a lot of the comedy was in the script, and we should say at this point it's written by Ni Kwang, who was the uncredited writer of Fist of Fury, and this movie weirdly examines a lot of the same territory as Fist of Fury. It doesn't have, obviously, we don't have a death that's being avenged, but it's set in Shanghai, which is also super rare for most of Lau Kar-leung's movies, generally set in and around Guangzhou and kind of Canton and southern China, because that was the martial arts he favored. This is a movie that's sort of meant to be taking place in Shanghai, and that's why almost everybody's wearing like very contemporary clothes, which is again also super rare for a Lau Kar-leung movie. Outside of like Lady is the Boss, when he kind of goes even more contemporary, but it's weird seeing people wearing the kind of Fist of Legend or Fist of Fury style suits. And
mixed with the
there's still some traditional but like Shaun, like you guys say, it has a little bit of everything, and I think the comedy works really well. It has a spectacular amount of action for its relatively short running time.
Bonkers.
But never feels overloaded with it. He breaks up the flow of it really nicely, partly with that, like we said, with the wife kind of basically setting up who he's going to come into, and the ninja, when we do get him, Karada-san, when he does actually kind of do his thing at the end, it's just an absolute fucking joy. And there's an amazing interview. I watched this on the Shawscope box set, and there's a fantastic interview with Karada-san about his experience of working on the movie from Frederic Ambrazine's archives. Shout out to Frederic Ambrazine for doing the Lord's work. It's so good. But he said that the whole Japanese crab technique came from Lau Kar-leung watching him doing karate katas, and then just basically reshaped something that he already knew really well slightly moved it into what we ultimately got. And had
that's genius. That's genius, right?
I think I'd sell like half my collection just to have that behind the scenes of, you know what I mean, like a 20-minute documentary. I'd rebuy it later, but man, just that's magic. That's
Kurata, though, he says something very interesting in that interview where he says, it's quite early on in the interview when he says he wasn't interested in the Japanese style of fight choreography. He was just like, I want none of that. I'm going to go to Hong Kong. And he liked what they were doing. And I think that's interesting because you don't often get that. You don't often get someone heading, especially in the early days. I mean, how many Japanese actors really made it in the old school Shaw Brothers studio?
Very few. I mean, he was kind of the first.
Yeah, really exactly.
And I think his legacy is incredible. I mean, for those who don't know, he basically kind of took the Hong Kong style back to Japan. So there was two big fighting schools for stuntmen and martial artists in Japan. One was set up by Sonny Chiba, and the other one was set up by by Kurata Yosaki, and one of the very most prominent students of Kurata-san's school was Kenji Tanigaki, who would go on to do so much, including all the choreography for the Rurouni Kenshin movies in Japan, and is a long-time Donnie Yen collaborator, and very recently, literally just a few days ago, won an award for Best Choreography at the Hong Kong Film Awards for Twilight of the Warriors. Congratulations,
which
Kenji-san.
was presented by Yasuaki
By
Kurata.
Yasuaki Kurata, I know,
Yeah,
it comes full circle. So it's kind of super cool that he had this very Hong Kong mentality that he took back and made kind of Japanese action movies better. But an amazing actor, and he's really kind of spanned almost every decade of really incredible action that came out of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Mostly Hong Kong. He didn't really do as much in Japan. He was mostly, I think, trained the next generation. Did quite a few Japanese projects that kind of more ninja movies, weirdly, but they were never really quite as successful internationally as Shaun Challenges Ninja or as Heroes of the East. But he started with The Angry Guest, was his first one for Chang-Chi, right? It's a Chang-Chi movie.
I believe so. Yeah,
he
did a lot of Bruceploitation too.
Yes,
he did a ton of it,
and quite a lot in Taiwan. It doesn't have as large a kind of a body count in terms of number of movies that he made. I think he's only about the 80 or so mark. Where
I love how that's not like a lot.
It's not, man. When we just lost Ku Feng,
Chang-Chi's like, like that's rookie numbers.
Ku Feng was into the like 300 or 400, I think.
Yeah,
I want to know. I like talk about omnipresent. Bolo Young or Ku Feng. I need to like see a list of their every appearance. I mean, Bolo. I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because I do those Bolo Fridays on Instagram, and I rarely have to repeat. It's been like 2 years, like every Friday. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'll go back to Bloodsport just to throw like that in, but my gosh, it's
which
just like
Yasuaki Kurata is also in, isn't he? In Bloodsport as well, right?
I think, is he? Is like, oh wow.
Well, looking at his filmography now, one that is glaringly strange that I didn't even know he was in it. He was cast as a passerby in Police Story.
Whoa.
Wow.
So that's an interesting.
I wonder what that pays. Like he just wanted like a small check or something.
I've never spotted him.
Maybe that keeps you in SAG. You know what I mean? Like the SAG, like in Hollywood. You have to keep it like fresh. Like
if anyone listening,
I think it was Blood Fight that he did, not Bloodsport. Sorry.
If anyone listening knows where he is,
I know that too.
Please let us know.
I've never spotted him.
Yeah, he's a passerby, so that could be really tricky because in the mall there's a lot of passersby.
That is true.
Dragon, I wanted to ask you, just like kind of putting a bow tie on how you got into it. Like I know Dirty Hose, like you're up there, you're one. How does Heroes of the East? Is it pushing up? Is in your top ones?
Oh, it's really close, and I almost think of them as being different sort of animals. Where I still think Dirty Hose the better comedy for me, and the fighting in Dirty Hose so much more stylized in terms of its like. Much more of a dance than it is kind of real martial arts. As real martial arts as you kind of get in a choreographed movie. But I think Heroes of the East, the fighting styles are so diverse but so accurate to the ones that they're portraying. Like all the Japanese fighting styles that we see are pretty authentically portrayed by real Japanese performers, and the logistics of structuring that must have been such a headache because I don't think any of them spoke Cantonese that well, and certainly from what Kurata-san says in his interview when he was coming over to do it, they didn't really communicate that well. So it would be the case of having to show each other the moves and then just okay was the only universal word that went back and forth.
That's crazy.
But it's an absolute masterstroke of how almost it's like predates like End Bosses computer games. And I know an awful lot of martial arts movies do that, but the only thing that would make this better is if instead of meeting at random different locations, they were working their way up a pagoda, right? They were working their way up some sort of level of building.
Dude, you're speaking my language, Joe. I wanted to take some notes, and I realized I kind of can just remember them when we chat. But I was thinking video game the whole time. It's ahead of the curve, and it's you know what it makes me think, and this is something that I on this last rewatch I picked up a lot of kung fu movies that the guy. And this is something in Bruce Lee's philosophy. Bruce Lee believed that the practitioner himself has to be in excellent shape. His attributes have to be I mean, that's like a lot of it, you know what I mean? Which is true. And it reminds me of UFC. They put Gracie in there because they wanted to show the art. And at the time, Hickson Gracie was like 20 or 15 pounds heavier, solid muscle. But they felt if they put him in there in the UFC one, it wouldn't really showcase Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as much, because it would just be like, okay, this guy's a beast anyway. You know what I mean? And so when you see a lot of these movies, it's usually the hero, unless he has to go through his arc of the training, but the hero is just, he's just better than everyone else, you know what I mean? And that's not the case here. Instead of like, you actually start at the beginning, there's a little bit of like, wait, is she not as good at martial arts? Does he kind of need to get better? He goes to this school. He doesn't seem like he's respected as like high up. They kind of always like rip on him, you know what I mean? So what I think Lau Kar-leung was trying to do was let Chinese martial arts itself be the reason it won. It's not because they never really played in, oh, everyone's like, you are the best and you pulled out this because you're so magical. No, it's the martial arts he had to represent.
That in a way is a little bit of the kind of, you could in a way, and I don't think it was designed as this, you could view that itself as a bit of a diss, where he's not really even kind of a martial artist. He's just like a guy who's like a son of a like an import-export guy. He's just kind of like a normal guy but he's able to beat every single actual genuine master that they send over in different martial arts.
Right.
But there's a sense of kind of like the community aspect of he's going to the school each time, and they're kind of like logistically working it out.
Yeah.
Because someone else at the school kind of know, okay, no, he uses this type of style and it's really hard. So you've got to use drunken boxing, which is really, you've got to use something soft and fluid, right? So that there's a kind of like head scratching aspect that I really dig before each fight. And there's dirty tactics a little bit from a couple of the Japanese guys, like the sort of judo practitioner who arrives at just before the stroke of midnight and sits down. And
that's great.
But they kind of get him back too with some dirty tricks of kind of oiling himself up, right?
Exactly.
And it kind of works so beautifully of just making that it never gets repetitive. Every fight has its own kind of little energy. Some are a little bit more harder for them to stage just by the nature of what they're using, like the Psy fights. And you can tell the one that Lau Kar-leung maybe scratched his head the most of, like, how can I make this dynamic?
It's a weird weapon.
Yeah, and he moves it to a different location, and so that they're kind of fighting through the bars. And I think he gave that guy a little bit more kind of busy work to do. There's twitching, there's kind of twitching, which oddly he does himself too when he's playing Beggar Soul. He's doing a little bit of that mustache twitching.
Yes, he is. Yeah, you're
which is
obviously
kind of
right.
like, kind of works too. And that wee guy I always found really, he was the one that didn't quite fit for me when I was a kid and I watched the movie. It was kind of like that was the one you were like, okay, can we get to one of the better guys? And the guy, there's a couple of scenes that at the time when I watched it on really low res bootleg, really felt like the first guy that he fights with the samurai sword, with a katana. There's a couple of shots where he's so red in the face. He looks so genuinely furious.
Oh, yeah.
And watching it in a decent quality restoration, I don't notice that as much. So it's maybe just the fact that all the colors were to black. So I never got the sense that he genuinely pissed someone off to a point where he was trying to kill him. But that's what we told ourselves when we first watched it. It was like, oh man, that guy, he's trying to come for real.
Well, I think that guy you're touching on, he really, I mean, he comes across as like you're not thinking of him as an actor in that scene. He's really like coming across as furious and authentic. I want to ask you guys, like, this is kind of a thought experiment. Tell me if you agree with this. This is something that came into my mind when I was watching it. Do you feel it could have been slightly better, this movie? And it's hard to find. I'm not trying to poke a hole, but when you think could it improve it somehow? Do you think if in the middle, if Gordon Liu lost one, if he had lost one match, do you know what I mean? To kind of like set the stage in a different way.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, because I just think it's a little odd that it's such a clean sweep. Do you know what I mean? It's just such a flawless victory that, because in 36 Chamber, he's trying to go against Li Huising, and that's when he makes the 3 sectional staff in that adversity. There is the adversity here. He has to, and you feel the adversity in each fight. He has to get over that hump,
Yeah.
And so that's great. I just wonder, and it might break the flow, but I felt like if he had to go back to his wife, who she was kind of, they're reconciling a bit, and he was like, oh, I don't know, I can, I felt like it might, who knows, it could throw off the whole thing.
I think the only thing that maybe would have done is I kind of got the sense that he had to get a flawless victory across the board. Otherwise, the Japanese would have won. Like if he'd lost
Yeah.
one round, I think they would have taken it. It probably wouldn't have gone any
Oh,
further.
right, because
from that
he's
point.
won. Right, because like I know what you mean. Because if any of them lose, that's it.
Well, if
And
any of them
he
lose, there's
lost-
another guy. Yeah. If
Oh,
he
that's what I
loses,
meant.
it's
But
all
that guy doesn't get another chance. The guy that
Yeah.
he beats.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think also the interesting thing is whereas Gordon Liu gets a clean sweep and actually beats all of them, and that's Lau Gaolung's basically going, hey, Chinese Kung Fu is the best. But on the flip side of that, I think it's important to note that these fights occur because Gordon Liu doesn't understand Japanese culture. He doesn't take the sword, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know that at the end of the day, it's kind of that misunderstanding between, or not misunderstanding from a Japanese perspective, it's a misunderstanding from a Chinese perspective,
Yeah.
which is really, I like that because not to get too deep or thematic for a second, but I think that's his loss. I think that's Gordon Liu's ultimate loss. I don't think it's he wins the fights, but his ultimate loss is that he has to fight because he caused it. He could have just taken that sword. Of course, he didn't understand, but I don't know. I think there's something there that his ultimate mistake made these fights happen essentially. Which
Well, let
is
me ask
kind
that
of-
when you're saying like as a figure of speech, not a figure of speech. I thought you meant as a metaphor. The whole time he's not taking the sword. If he had literally taken the sword there, would that have just been the one-off? Then do you think is that the point you're saying?
I think they would have accepted him if he
Yeah,
took
I
the
think
sword.
so. Yeah,
I
they
think
took
maybe
as
It
a
would have been
mask
like a
for fun.
TV episode. It would have been a short, like half hour.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I said earlier on, like the main enemy in this is misunderstanding because
Yes.
it's on both sides too. Like,
Yes.
the letter should never have been shown to the rest of. She
No.
should never have shown it to Yusaki Kurata. And there's one of the commentaries said that there's a weird thing that they do that she's more made up. When she's gone back to Japan, like she's got lipstick on for the first time when she's interacting with Yosaki Kurata. And
I had to
they can
rewind that, by the
speculate-
way. When he was talking his slang, he goes, "She put a little bit of lippy on," and I didn't know what he meant. I had to rewind. I was like, "What the heck did he mean?" And then I looked. He's like, "Yeah."
And, yeah, you listen to that Jonathan Clement. We should give a shout
Yes.
out to the Jonathan Clement's commentary. Is fantastic. Like,
So
and
good.
do you guys know Jonathan Clements at all from other things?
No.
Because oh man, Jonathan Clements has been around for a long time. And back when I was buying manga DVDs on the first time that they were coming out over here, like the first time I saw Vampire Hunter D, first time I saw Appleseed, Jonathan Clements was doing the commentaries because he's written extensively about anime, completely fluent in Japanese and Chinese. He wrote an amazing book that there's a great audiobook for called A Brief History of the Martial Arts, where he basically just says everything to do with ninjas is bullshit historically, right? It's ninjas are great, but none of that is like.
Well, Dragon, that's what I have to tell you. I have to interject there because you mentioned it. That
break your heart a little?
Oh, dude, it's like when I found out when I was young, I drove to like this little middle school by my house, and these older kids told me Santa Claus wasn't real, and I drove home, and I asked my mom, and she goes, "Ask your father." That's all she said, and I knew because he would say, "Of course,
Right, of course."
Right. This is me. Like, okay, and this is my denial. I almost wanted to fast forward that part. I was like, "No, don't tell me that." You know what I mean? I was like, I didn't want to.
We can still suspend disbelief. Like, at some point, I'm going to visit Japan. Like, my dear friend Carlos from Heroes 3 just went to Japan recently, and he went. There's like a ninja museum that you can go there, and like, I don't know how legit that ninja museum is, but a lot of the shit they have there looks ancient, and there's a lot of like really old swords and stuff.
Right.
And the people who are taking you around dress up as ninjas, and you can go to like there's a little event for kids to go and throwing stars at like boards and stuff.
Oh hell yeah!
And so I'll absolutely be going there.
You better you got to document that. Go ahead.
Suspend disbelief in my mind, right? So I don't really care if it's kind of a more 1920s onward creation.
Well, he said, I want to say to anyone listening in this commentary, he said in the 50s, the stuntmen kind of made this up, and there was like there was a simultaneous, I don't know if he said comic book or maybe a manga style, like graphic novel thing, where these stories were going. And the reason it happened was because at the time of the occupation, they couldn't even mention samurais at all. So when there was all these or when there were all these deaths, they made up this other thing they could mention.
The ultimate villain, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. And then it like grew and grew and grew. And then I guess they did in 1962, whatever that, which I have to see that ninja.
Shinobi no Mono. Yeah, Shinobi no Mono is not legit amazing. Like, and I think a lot of the things we think of as being ninja tropes are all evidenced in that movie in like 1962, and so cool.
For those listening, you can't see us obviously, but a copy of it actually sits right behind Dragon right now. That's it, right?
Oh wow! There you go.
I have the same
Love those
set
movies.
in right behind me over there.
And I'm praying to the ninja gods that we get that Radiance keep that going, because I think it's sold quite well for them. They're re-releasing it as a standard edition.
I have to
and
get
I'm
that.
just praying, because there's a lot of movies in that series. Technically 9, though. I think the main guy died really young from I think liver cancer or bowel cancer when he was like preposterously young, and so there's
he didn't die from wait for it. He didn't die from ninjavitis.
He did not.
Sorry, you can edit that out. I don't want that in. Just cut it out.
Not edit that out.
I know, that's gonna be that's a clip for IG. That's gonna be.
Sorry to interrupt with my dumb joke.
No, I just want to say, and how it like snowballed. It kept snowballing, and I guess it was going away. And I can't remember what brought it back up. It was movies like this in the 70s. It was like, and it led up to the American ninja craze. But also, what they did is he said that they went back. Now I have to re-listen to this part. They went back in all these like documents. Anytime they said gangster or some word, they replaced the word with ninja. So people that go, look, it's in these old scrolls or whatever it was. So that coupled with. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the ninja craze. I mean, I had all the catalogs. I bought the outfit out of the back. I mean, in America, it was like a bomb went off.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. I'm talking commercials. It was like the coolest thing ever. And there's this guy, Stephen Hayes, that made these ninja books, like actually, and he really is talking about, but he's presenting it like this is the ancient, this is how they did it. And it's funny, during COVID, I bought it's a collection. It's like this big. It's enormous, and it's a collection of all those ninja books he made.
Wow.
And it's kind of low quality though. Have you ever seen a book that's paperback and the scans are like they're so like dark and you can barely see like him? It's all these like figures like move 2, move 3, and it's so bad. It looks like a Xerox. But point being that like, so it hurts my little 7-year-old child to hear this.
Dude, me too. The first martial art I ever did, like the first class I ever went to, was supposedly a ninjutsu class, right?
Wow.
The guy had no clue what he was doing, and in retrospect, probably should not have been allowed to train children, because everything he had us doing was, in retrospect, super dodgy. Was he
in it? Was he in the outfit? I hope he was.
Yeah,
I doubt.
Yeah.
No way.
Outfit, but no mask.
And which is common. Have you seen that a lot? Even in this, they never finish off the. I don't know if that's the American take on it.
You see that a lot in Shinobi no Mono as well. It's kind of more just like hood, and
like a hood.
They don't always cover the front of their face.
Well, that's when I bought the
headbands and shit that came later.
Yeah, when I bought the authentic ninja outfit, like authentic, it had that. It came with a hood, and then you had to use this little separate piece to pull up a nylon. Yeah. But it was more like a whatever, like nylon, like a guy robbing a bank, but it only went up to here. Yeah, you know it. You know it.
Yeah, 100%. But that dude just had us sitting opposite each other, cross-legged, punching each other in the shoulders as hard as we could.
Oh, that's a McDojo.
Went dead, right? And then when we finally got to go outside, because he kept us doing that for fucking months, because he had presumably no actual techniques to show us. So I think it was probably a little bit of, the guy maybe knew a little bit of karate, because I remember there being some karate kicks and stuff. But after like maybe a couple of months to do this, summertime came around, and we moved to like a different place, because clearly he got kicked out of the place we were using. So like,
we need to look this guy up.
Oh man! So we got moved to like a university campus, and they had a little bit of a garden, and that then extended to him being like, "Okay, all of you guys go outside, and if I see you, you fail." So we were like hiding behind trees and shit, learning nothing but to 7 and 10-year-old kids, because we were all.
That's great. That's
I'm thinking this sounds like the best thing I've ever. This is the best class ever.
And that was more enjoyable when the bruises finally stopped off our upper shoulders. But man, I was right there with you, Dad. I was big into ninjas with at that point, no ability to get hold of the actual source. Like, I couldn't get the Japanese movies until years and years later.
Yeah, they came late.
So for me, it was American Ninja, and it was like mostly, in fact, almost entirely either ninja movies or the comic books for G.I. Joe, for like Storm Shadow and G.I. Joe, Snake Eyes.
You guys didn't have we had over here the Ninja magazine. I posted on IG.
We had, so I could get the kind of the supposed real martial arts stuff, but nothing in actual media that you could really watch and look to and be like,
right.
Yeah, that's the real shit. That's the source. Because I knew, even as a kid, I knew that American Ninja was like,
right,
this is a bit questionable. Enter the Ninja felt a little bit more legit.
Well, because that's the weird thing. Like Shogatsugi, that's the strange thing. It's like the pseudo whatever it is that they made up, and they like it almost sounds like Scientology or something. But whatever the original guy made up,
Mm.
like there's guys that are more legit into that. And I think also Shogasugi's so legit that he's borrowing from a lot of different styles
Mhm.
and kind of packaging that under the ninja banner. But then they often say that there were assassins back in the day, but I think it just was unrelated. They're trying to like tie that in. You know, I guess there were like
according to
emperors.
Jonathan Clements, yeah, and I think his book's really good. I mean, if anyone get the audiobook for A Brief History of the Martial Arts, and it is really good. He doesn't spend the whole time just dissing that stuff. It's really interesting, and his research is impeccable, and he's also very funny. Like he's got a good way of like balancing. His commentary is pretty funny too. He like
so good, so impressive. Like he doesn't it's like, I don't know, sometimes in commentaries they pause and they start. His is just like, and it's not too wordy. It's perfectly paced and really, really good historical stuff. The historical stuff he gave on all of it. I noticed though, on the Dragon Dynasty commentary, this commentary though, there isn't too much for whatever reason. Maybe they just didn't do too much of the backstories of the Japanese actors and stuff. They might say a little bit, but it wasn't like a Lofton on the Shaw Brothers one. They'll say he did this and this and this and this. Yeah. It's kind of like, you know,
and some of those guys have done quite a lot. I think the dude who's the judo fighter, I think, is the one that's in the Street Fighter movies. I think,
and that's what's odd, Dragon. There was one line in the commentary I rewound to say I didn't understand what he meant when the judo fighter stood up. Right, they're all standing. The judo fighter stands up, and Clemens goes, "Oh, right there, it said just a black belt in judo, which is the equivalent of a high school kid in high school." Did you hear him say that? It was odd. It was an odd line, but I didn't know what he meant because black belts in judo could probably beat up most martial arts hands. Like judo is so legit, so realistic, and a black belt, I don't know, maybe he was implying the other guys are grandmaster, red belt. I don't know. That line, I was like, what do you mean? That threw me a bit. He said which is the equivalent to a good fighter in high school. I was like, what? Like, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was just a strange curveball. I might have misunderstood him, but yeah, from me studying martial arts, like in jiu-jitsu tournaments, we'd have, when the judo guys are there, they're like sometimes judo schools would come in, and sometimes it was almost like sandbagging where they'd be actual black belts, but coming into like a white belt tournament. And there's a lot of overlay with judo, and those guys they'd wreck some havoc.
Nice.
It's maybe not. Sorry, I don't think it is. I'm wrong. One of the guys is definitely from the Street Fighter movies. It's maybe not the judo guy, and it's really hard to cross-check on Hong Kong Movie Database. But I think that those guys had done quite a bit of stuff in Japanese cinema. There was less.
He's been in a lot of films. He's been in some of the Ultraman films.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's been in a few stuff. I'm looking at another database with him, and he's I can't find Street Fighter on it, but he's definitely been in a whole bunch of stuff.
One other point on the judo: if you guys ever train judo, it's one of the most strenuous. Like oh my gosh, you have to break fall, but it's like in jiu-jitsu you can be down drilling and stuff. When you're doing a judo class, you're just going to be tossed like the entire class, or tossing a guy. You know,
it's like, quite funny. I kind of blame Heroes of the East for like distracting me away from ninjas. Because once I'd watched Duel to Death, I was kind of like, oh, I'm really into ninjas now all of a sudden. And then I went to Heroes of the East, and while I didn't love it because I was looking for ninjas, it definitely put me on more of a path of I want more kung fu films as well. So I think, if anything, I never had a ninja phase.
Wow.
Never in my life. I've always liked them as like a villain, or I love the on-screen ninjutsu and the hiding and the kind of illusion of it all. Like you will not find a bigger fan of Ninja in the Dragon's Den than me. I absolutely adore that film.
Yeah.
And I think I watch films here and there with ninjas in, and I've always loved them, like Ninja in the Deadly Trap. It's kind of more the Chinese ones I've always gone towards.
Yeah, because that's
what ones, I should say, rather than Japanese cinema. I'm incredibly late to. For those that don't know, by the way, I've started my Japanese cinema journey. Sorry, this year. Really, I'm kind of a simpleton when it comes to Japanese cinema. So I've started with most of the horror stuff that I should have caught up on. Like, for example, I watched Audition for the first time this year. So there's quite a few that I'm not in on. But I've bought the Shinobi set, and I've bought a few along the way. I just picked up oh my god, I can't remember, the Black Tide Killers.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah.
I just picked up that. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm really excited about watching that. So I'm picking up a few here and there. But yeah, I think as a kid, I always leaned strictly towards Hong Kong cinema, and it really infected. What a terrible word! It really influenced
Yeah, me too.
my cinematic journey, in that I never wandered to Japan. A few horror, I obviously watched The Ring, and The Grudge, and the big one. I've seen Akira. I've seen a whole shitload of anime, but just the actual Japanese cinema. And I kind of blame like Shaw Brothers, Heroes.
Me too.
for
Fist of
taking-
Fury is the biggest, like
Right.
that really. But Shaun, I almost forgot for a second. So was it to Celestial about 20 years ago when you watched Heroes of the East again and loved it? Was it about that period?
No, I missed it on Celestial.
Oh, wow.
I never picked it up on Celestial. I picked up, funny enough, Dragon mentioned a bootleg earlier from Flashlegs. I actually picked up the Pan Media, otherwise known as
Okay.
Bonsai Video.
No, so
aka
in the
Red
90s.
Sun.
So you did see it shortly after and loved it. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
So
I thought maybe it was like 30 years later it took you to like.
No, there was a website called, everyone forgets about this website. It's called hkflix.com. And it existed back when I was like 15, 16 years old. So I originally probably watched Heroes of the East when I was probably 14, 15. And then HK Flix, when I started, bringing in a bit of money from my first job, I must have bought Heroes of the East maybe when I was 18. And revisited it then. And back then, I really liked it because I was just like, by then I was, into Gordon Liu. I was into Leung Leung. Granted, I couldn't tell you Leung Leung's name back then, but I knew him as a director and knew he was great. So yeah, I watched it a little bit later. I became a big fan of it, but I never ranked it super high in my list until much later in life. Literally over the last few years, it's really climbed high. And I just love it. I think there's some interesting touches. For example, one thing, and this is kind of by the by a little bit, but you might be able to answer this question though. Leung Leung, he doesn't typically use that much sexuality in his films, right?
Not
in
hugely.
general?
I always got the case of like him being quite weirdly, not so much chaste as a little bit naive to the world in a way.
Yeah.
Where it's very strange because I think Chang-Chi was always kind of very kind of focused on male relationships, and I think people always, I don't want to get into that whole Chang-Chi story again, but people quite often in the West kind of misinterpret that as like homoeroticism, when I think it was never really designed to be that at all. But he was just, I think, railing against what had come before him, which was a whole series of movies which had women as the main central character, right? So he kind of really was realizing that I think he could appeal to a much larger audience, because at the time when the girls were leading the box office in Hong Kong, it was mostly women going to see the movies. And then as the rising middle classes kind of everyone started having a bit more money and a little bit more free time as a result, more men started going to see movies, because previously they hadn't been able to, because the women who weren't traditionally working, they were staying at home, so they were the ones that went to the cinema. And he realized that if you made movies that were more appealing to men, there's a good chance that both men and women would go and see those movies, whereas in some cases men might not go and see a movie that had a female star. So I think there was a little bit that had a business sensibility to it. And then I think he was also just quite interested in the idea of male relationships, that kind of what we think of as evolving into heroic brotherhood and heroic bloodshed. It was kind of his sort of thing, but again, quite weirdly asexual in a way. You never really got examinations of that in his movies. Leung Leung much more focused on the martial arts, in its purest essence, because that's the background he came from.
I mean, even in Executions from Shaolin, he uses martial arts as sex or as foreplay.
Completely, the wedding night.
Doesn't focus on the sex. After that, like the lights go off and it disappears. But before that, it's all martial arts. Very interesting.
The guy who I feel had the most kind of like well-rounded perspective was maybe Chor Yun. Chor Yun, when he examined relationships, you did actually get real sexuality in his movies quite routinely. Some a little bit as well, but I really feel Chor Yun was kind of the most interested in that. So the relationship between men and women sometimes using sex to kind of manipulate guys, and there was a lot of that sort of examination. But Shaw Brothers was great. It gave you a little bit of everything depending on which directory you looked at.
Very, very much so. I just literally this week, no, last weekend, I watched Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Porter
So
for the
good,
first
man.
time. For the first time.
So good.
Honestly, it's probably in my top 10 Shaw Brothers films.
It's
I
amazing.
loved that film.
I need to get on this train.
It's
great, man.
so
It's really, really
good. A fantastic film.
Like you guys, my watch pile. Like I always joke. Like I told you, there's that meme of a guy. He's in a bed and he says, "Man dies from all of his books that he wants to read. It falls on him in the bed," and he's just like, it's like an Onion story, you know, like the Onion, or you know,
Yeah.
It's never ending. Or it's what we call over here a fourth railroad story, where there's a very famous kind of railway bridge here that's so big that they're constantly painting it. Like by the time that they get to one end, they have to go back to the other end of the bridge and start all over again.
Wow.
And that's kind of feel how my watch pile is. It's just I'm never going to get on top of it.
Oh, I know.
It never depletes. Sometimes I just look at
Shout
my
is
watch.
laughing right now, like from a mountaintop.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
like,
they're all cackling. Yeah, so many 4Ks coming. But sometimes I just look at my watch list and I'm just like, no, I'm just going to burn my apartment down and start again. It's so many.
What's funny with that, those Shaws are coming in so fast, and I want to start like reviewing them on my channel. And what I thought I'm going to do is like I have them all lined up, and like the movies you can pull them out. I was like going to close my eyes and just grab a random one.
That's the best way to do it.
Well, and just let it fall in my hand. And if it's like a Venom's, I'll just put it back because I've seen that a ton. But yeah, I think that'd be fun to do that. But wow, they're coming. There's it's like a freight train of releases. It's just like, you know,
shouts and announcements are bonkers.
Oh, and I want to ask you guys, this is a new feeling I have towards the like physical releases. Whenever I was opening up the Shawscope, which I adore, I think, you know, the Shawscopes are amazing. When I pulled out the Heroes of the East, I saw it's with Dirty Hill. I was like, you know what? I kind of wish this had its own single release. I feel like it kind of, because even when you look at the back of Shawscope, it says brand new 2K, but this is just the Celestial, because in the early Shawscopes, they didn't do a new 2K scan arrow on everyone in that. Well, no, yeah, if you look, no, I'm positive, because it's only about like later on they start doing like on everyone, but on the first one there's about 4 or 5. It's like 7 maybe are brand new scans, and the others are just they took the Celestial HD Master and they just kind of transferred it over. Still looks really good, but the point is that I don't know how you guys feel. Like I think it kind of. You know, like when people listen to albums, they have that little stand and you put the album that you're listening to on that stand. Yeah. It's kind of single releases, kind of like, oh, it's like, you know what I mean? But when they're in a box set, even if they're all so amazing, it just kind of, it's in the mix a bit. I kind of want Heroes of the East to have this, like, I don't know, I wanted to have a shrine. Like I wanted to have its own box set or something.
It's really funny you should say that. I looked for 25 minutes for the 88 films release of Heroes of the East. I knew I had it. I knew I had it somewhere.
Wait, hold on. Does that exist?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
I was looking for it.
I'm like,
I swore to God I had a copy of it. And I went crazy when I couldn't find it. I was like, where the hell's it gone? And then I realized it just doesn't exist. I had to Google it to be sure.
Well, and it's it makes the box set better for it. I mean, God, there's so many bangers on that first
Shawscope
one, you know, but it's just a little surprising that, you know, 5 Venoms, you think, and Here's the East, they would, but then it would lose the like majestic nature of that shot.
I think we're still quite relatively early on in terms of, I mean, we've been pretty quick to jump onto the kind of 4K thing comparatively, because Blu-rays still massively outsell 4Ks. DVDs still massively outsell Blu-rays in the US anyway. And I think Arrow has a pretty good track record of revisiting releases and then giving them a 4K. And the other labels are too. So I think 88 Films are going back to Come Drink With Me, and that's getting a 4K release quite soon. So I wouldn't be too surprised within the next maybe 5 years that we start seeing kind of a 4K version of a few of them.
I'm gonna have to,
I think, because it could be an individual at that point, right? Or they might only have their rights for a certain period of time, and then you might get Shout across in the US doing something like that. So you might get a 4K Shaws set and a Leung Shaws set or something.
I only say
I know what you're saying
because my wallet just can't.
Oh no, it's brutal.
Well, you know what?
It's so hard to keep up.
No.
Well, I had a wall that Dragon hit, and I was thankful for it. I got the bug for some reason. What it was is I got the Xbox Series X, which plays 4Ks. I was like, cool. So when I got I was watching like Apocalypse Now and different ones, and it looked really good. But then when I got to the Bruce Lee box, the 4K Arrow box set, I put it in, and it looked not good
Really
at all.
dark,
It looked
yeah.
really dark, and I was like,
Oh.
man, wow, the Shout Select is like killing this thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I was like, what's going on? Then I put in another one that looked really murky, and then I talked to Dragon about it. He said, oh, until you get the 4K TV, they're gonna, and that kind of saved me, because I kind of was grabbing Arnie ones, like Running Man and different ones, and so I kind of like feel good. Okay, I can just get the Blu-rays, because those 4Ks, it's a bit of like, it feels like you're going to start a whole new thing from DVD
Oh,
to
100%.
Blu-ray, you know.
Yeah.
But I will say, I did get the singles of Arrow, and I haven't told you guys about this yet. When I put that Arrow, the single version, because they're Blu-rays,
They look unbelievable, right?
oh my gosh, I'm so late to the party, because I could watch all the extras. I watched the Final Game of Death. I was watching all the stuff in there, because they're on Blu-rays in that 4K box set.
Mhm.
But the actual, you know, so I cannot believe how good it looked. It just looks, I put on that Big Boss, and I want to do a video where I show all the different versions of, like, it's insane. And I never got this one Shout box set, but because they fixed it with the Shout Select, where they fixed the color stuff, and they go down in the weeds. There's so many guys with his hair has a little too much blue, and we need to fix the color correction, you know? So I swear, I've watched the opening of that Big Boss, where he's getting that, like, where James 10 gets that, when was maybe going to be the star still, he has that fight at the beginning. And I've watched that so many times to like check the qualities, you know, and when I started falling into it, I can see the color correction errors on it. So when I got the Criterion, I could see the blue in his hair, but it's like, oh, it's not right. It's not like the Shout Select, because the Shout Select has dark black hair. It looks so great, you know. And when I got the Arrow, I was like, oh, like, this is the promise. Like, they nailed everything. And what they nailed, which is, some people I think slack on this, the Shout Selects look amazing, but the audio is like old, the dub's very low, you know, when you have to crank up your audio. Arrow, beautiful, uncompressed. I mean, those guys are slaying it. They're slaying it. I couldn't believe how good that looked.
Yeah, buying 4Ks is hazardous. It's just like you said, it's like starting a brand new collection. The other day, I bought Jason X on 4K.
Wow,
what the fuck am I doing? Let's be honest.
Because
I have a bit of a soft spot for that movie.
No, that movie's cool. That one kill where he breaks that guy's head, that's
Classic.
really good.
Classic.
but you have the box set I have from Shout. Like, we kind of have no need to get, like, on 4K. Is it really gonna, you know what I mean? Like,
no. And to make matters worse, I also bought Jason Goes to Hell on 4K.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm a massive fan of the Friday 13th films. They have a really like nostalgia feel for me. So I absolutely love them. But that's the problem with 4K. They release all these shiny releases with bells and whistles more so than the Blu-ray. You're like, well, I've got to get that now.
Because I think that they realize that the only people who are buying 4Ks at the moment have got a little bit of disposable income to throw. So
yeah, and I think would you say that more cinephiles kind of lean towards 4K? Is a regular moviegoer picking up 4K? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the consoles, I mean, Jason, you mentioned that you were able to start playing them because you got your Xbox, right? And I did have a 4K player, and it was a piece of shit. Like,
is it the Sony one that froze all the time?
No, that one I had to send back. I had a Sony one that just straight up didn't work, right?
Oh, yeah.
Then I got a Panasonic one. The
Panasonic's good.
Was so slow. Like, literally, I could put in the disc, go away, make a cup of tea, and come back, and it would just about have brought up the menu screen.
Oh,
right?
Jesus.
So it wouldn't be that one that
slow.
everyone... The famous thing you'll see in 4K is, you guys have seen this, people buy, you know, the standard Sony one we all have, right? The region free. They buy the 4K one of that, and it can't handle any of those 100 gig discs. They all freeze.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone, but and then everyone in the forums on 4K always say, oh, you got to get the Panasonic, I can't remember it, UD80 or something.
Yeah.
I have the cheaper one than that. Mine wasn't that one. And mine was like the entry level one. I think I got like a deal on like a Black Friday or something, and it was not that much. I think it was maybe £100 or £110 or something. It was a real pain. Like, half the discs that I got from Cine Asia would not work. So when I got like Raging Fire, the Raging Fire disc wouldn't work, and their Wandering Earth 2 disc just wouldn't work. Like, the menu would come up, but you couldn't play the movie.
That's crazy.
Right?
Weird. And I went back and forth to Cine Asia, and they were like, we have no idea. Every other machine should be playing it fine. And I had nothing else to check it in, right? So I initially thought it was maybe a faulty disc. So I sent the disc back, got a replacement, same exact thing. So anyway, cut a long story short, we really wanted to get the game Black Myth Wukong. and we sort of set ourselves a line of like, when that comes out on physical, we'll buy a PS5. That'll be the point when we upgrade. And so upgraded to PS5, sold the PS4, and sold my 4K player to help pay for the PS5.
Cool.
And all of a sudden, all 4K discs played straight away, super fast, because the processor from the PS5
That's
is under
nuts.
But the PS5, because of my shitty, my TV was like 4K but not UHD, so it could do 2160, but it would upscale my Blu-rays to 2160, which was nice. But as soon as I put in the PS5 basically said, your TV's not good enough for me, and it downgraded itself back down to like 10.
Wow.
So like at that point I was like, shit, man, I've got to take the plunge. And thank God for like Amazon Pay It and Honey Pay in 10, right? I was able to get like a 4K TV and just pay like 30 quid or 50 quid a month or something for the next however many years.
30 years.
It's not too bad, but I think it's probably going to be about almost 2 years. And we now have a 4K TV, and the difference is incredible. Like,
yes, I still have not seen that, because when I got the Conan the Barbarian 4K, which I actually got the Blu-ray later so I could see it, because that was a bit murky, but I could see it looked really well. And that's kind of what I'm holding until I get a 4K television, you know. But on the forums, it's such the ante keeps getting raised, right? So you have the one that freezes, you get the one that's better. Then you get the 4K television. People say the problem is, and I don't want to break your heart on this, you probably don't care, but PS5s and Series X don't have that Dolby Vision. And I guess this Dolby Vision, but you also have to have the television that has the Dolby Vision. Supposedly,
a separate sound system, ideally.
Well, no. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. No, it's not a sound thing. This Dolby Vision is actually, it's a color thing. It's some sort of color that brings out these blooms.
My TV plays it. My TV plays.
Okay, but you have to. But people were saying these guys are in different tiers talking about Coney, and these guys are like, oh, but do you have the Dolby Vision player? Like, no, like, oh, you're not seeing what we're seeing. We're seeing this insane thing, and I'm sitting here like with the Blu-ray, like, guys,
it's all relative, and I think for me, I'm pretty stoked with what we have just now. Like my sort of go-to disc, my check disc was Fury Road, because the colors in that looks
a great one
crazy.
to
I'm
pick.
sure it looks amazing. I'm sure you don't need that. I think that's just when guys get into that cinephile thing, because people talk about these, like, you know, those like halos that appear in films that kind of like, people talk about all that, like when they remaster movies, they have to deal with these weird, can't remember what they're called,
like artifacts, like in
like the directors have those in it with the sunlight and stuff, and they have to deal with that when they remaster it. Like they have to factor those in. And I'm like, man, these guys are talking about so much deep stuff. They're nerding out.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I'm sitting there without even having the television or the player, I think, reading it at the time. You know,
you'll get there, and it's like, hopefully by the time that you are kind of like have got a 4K TV, at that point we'll get like Heroes of the East, to bring it back to.
Good point. That's a good segue.
Back in 4K, right? And I think we've still got a bit of time. I think people keep telling us that physical media is on the way out, but I don't believe it at this point now. I think it's become the new vinyl. I think it's happened super fast, because everything moves faster in this day and age. And there was that wonderful phrase that they said that things had to pass through before they start becoming value again, called the trough of no value, which is a phrase I adore. And vinyl went through the trough of no value, right? Where you couldn't give it away. Like people were giving away boxes of vinyl for a pound, or just literally just giving it to thrift stores and stuff. And nobody was interested in it, and loads of it ended up in landfill. And now if you go and try and buy an LP, it's like $60
exactly
for a repress. And
the next one is CDs went through it. They're coming. And watch, there'll be a comeback. There'll be a comeback.
And VHS is seeing it just now as well. But I think with our little kind of world, I think it's just moved into this wonderful place of there's a much smaller market buying it, but we've got a really healthy group of boutique labels who are putting so much care and effort into it. And the labels, the major labels, might still be like kind of stepping away from it a wee bit, though I think they're also starting to realize that streaming's a bit of a Emperor's New Clothes, and they're not making the money from it they thought they were gonna. So Disney have now said they're going back to doing physical media again, after saying that they were going to stop, and Disney going to be opening up their archives, and they're starting to kind of put out more and more of the Fox stuff, and they're doing more licensing deals. Like we've seen Warner Bros. Licensing to Arrow recently.
I saw Apple leased that show with Jason Momoa, C. That's just got a physical media release.
Ah, nice.
All seasons on one set, but the company that's releasing it is not Apple. It's some other company that they've obviously struck up a deal with, and it's an American release.
They did the same with Severance. Severance is such a good series, but Severance got physical media releases as well for the first season. Hopefully, I'll get one for the second season too.
Sure it will.
Yeah, I think we're in a pretty healthy place. I don't think physical media is going anywhere. I don't think we're going to see 8K discs anytime soon. So I think 4K is pretty safe. I feel pretty safe and kind of, but I still go back and forth. And occasionally I still buy DVDs of some things too, if it's the only way of getting it. But
well, speaking of, when I watched Heroes of the East to listen to that commentary, I was shocked how good it looked on the Dragon Dynasty. Because, and this is another, like, I often would find myself reading about these technical things, and not to get too much into it, but the Celestial had that issue where it was PAL, and it had to transfer to NTSC. And in that transfer, it made it play a little faster. So it made it slightly blurry, and it lost like 2 minutes on the runtime, because like something like that. And so whenever I would buy the Dragon Dynasty, and I had been watching the Celestial in America, it kind of, we botched with that Red Sun bootlegs, kind of like ruined our region 1, the whole experience. You know about that. It upended it. You could get, people were just buying the ones, and it has the English dub. But what I was going to say is the Dragon Dynasty didn't have that PAL to NTSC transfer. So it looked way good. And when I was watching, I was expecting it to be like a drop. It looks almost as good as the Blu-ray. That DVD looked really, really nice. Had like a film quality to it. Had like a film quality.
There was a lot of heavy grain to it.
Going back to the film a second, I have a quick question. I put it in my notes because I was kind of baffled by it. When, I don't know if you remember, there's Wilson Tong is in this film. It's kind of, you don't see much of him, but there's a scene where Gordon Liu's character first walks into the school, and where Wilson Tong and Li Hoi Sang is kind of waiting for him. Is it me, or does Lau Leung use like a fisheye lens for about 3 seconds? When they first walk in, it's this bizarre like lens. It looked very strange. It looked warped.
Oh, you know what that is? I know what that is.
Yeah, what is that?
Okay, well, there's 2 things. It could be a fisheye, but Dragon knows it's the theater of Shaw had that. They went like this,
right?
And it had some sort of thing that Shaw did, and when they pan a lot, you see it warp.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It was panning.
I think they were using quite early anamorphic lenses. And I think they would often, like, partly to save time and also partly just because I don't think they had that much of a stock. So do you guys know what I mean about the difference between a prime lens and a zoom lens?
Not really.
So a prime lens,
camera, maybe on like a snap camera, well,
same principle, but like a prime lens only does one focal length. So a prime lens, like if you wanted to change between shot, and you've just changed between, you've taken off your 50mm prime lens and you put on your 85mm prime lens, you'll have to physically move the camera in order to get closer or further away. The lens will naturally be a little bit closer, or a little bit.
It's like a telescope, right? Like in essence.
No, it's just it's like the lens never changes its focal length. So by that I mean it never changes. Like the amount that it fills of the frame is always going to be the same. So if I put a 50mm lens on, and I was taking a portrait and I wanted more of the head in the frame, I'd physically have to move closer to get more of that person's head in the frame, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I took the 50 off and put an 85mm on, the 85mm would be punched in closer, so the person's head would fill more of the frame. So I wouldn't have to move the camera, right? But if you get a zoom lens will do multiple focal lengths. So zoom lens will allow you to go from like quite wide, which would be like a 24, or in some cases you kind of go as wide as like once you go to anything lower than a 16, you'll start seeing it being a bit fisheye. You never really get that unless it's a Beastie Boys video and you're specifically buying a fisheye lens, right? With zoom lenses, they tended to have got more distortion on the outer edges.
That must
and you sometimes read it as a bit of softness on when you're looking on Shaw Brothers movies, where only the real center of the frame is kind of really super sharp,
right?
And that's not necessarily. Sometimes they would really accentuate it when they put Vaseline around the outside of the lens, depending on if they were going to want to go for that sort of effect, because Vaseline will soften the image and it'll sometimes also
it looks
really
dreamlike.
Nice.
It looks like a dream sequence.
They would sometimes use that a little bit to hide reflections in metal blades. So if they're doing a shot where Lau Leung always got those beautiful shots of like racks of weapons and the light would glint,
lens flares.
Yeah, they'd often be like doing artificially putting in Vaseline or something around the edge of the lens to soften it, or a little film. And we should mention that this is like the cinematographer on this was a very young Arthur Wong. It's like maybe that might have been the first movie he shot. I can't remember exactly the first time out he went with Lau Gar-lung, but this is certainly very early on in his
His
career.
eye is incredible. There's some
He's
shots in this that
amazing.
are just like, wow.
Yeah, and a lot of really interesting stuff. And so you
Yes.
kind of move when he's speaking to his wife quite early on, and he shoots into the mirror first, and
Yes.
then moves around. Just beautiful, beautiful work. And I
So
think
good.
they got even better in Dirty Ho. So some of the tricks in Dirty Ho are just unbelievable. And it was really a beautiful marriage between someone who was always thinking about transitions, because Lau Gar-lung really seemed to have an editor's mind with how he was staging his kind of shots, where I often wonder if he was the guy who was actually there right beside the editor saying, no, you've got to, I shot this specifically to kind of like make sure this transition works. It's beautiful. But yeah, that's what that softness you're seeing. I don't think it was a fisheye lens, but I think they probably use a zoom a lot, partly for time, because they can basically kind of he doesn't do the crash zooms that you would see a lot in other Shaw Brothers and lower budget movie, where they use the crash zoom as almost an effect where you punch super in close in the face and his line of dialogue punch back out for the action. Because I think he was a little more considered with how his whole sequence was going to go, and expected the actors were going to be able to keep up with doing 50 moves in a row, whatever take that he had envisioned.
Not everyone can be Beardy. Beardy's
Dragon,
but
did you also hear, I'm not sure if this is like separate though, did you also hear, how like Shaw had their own studios in their screens, they bent on the sides, like, you remember those old like Dell, they probably still sell them, but those computer screens that go like on the edges, they kind of like round out. When I had asked, like it was in the Mighty Shaw group, and I think it was Tommy Retro that answered me, I asked why when they pan, it's probably a mixture, I'm not sure, but I asked why when it pans is it all warped like that, and he explained it had to fill the screen. I guess it's that anamorphic. And
I think it's more just there's a natural lens distortion. I don't think they were necessarily, because you can't really stretch the negative in that way at that time. Now you can do it on a computer, no problem. You can punch in, use a section of it, expand that middle section up and make that fill the whole frame. Back then, not so much. And the only way of really changing what was on there would be to like optically print the negative onto a different one, which they were doing. So you have your initial negative that's gone through the camera, and then normally sometimes they would cut the camera negative for the first edit. Not always. Normally you'd make like what they call work print. So you'd keep your original camera negative and not fuck with it. You don't want to break it, right? Because that's your source. So they would do a straight copy. You have a machine that literally copies one negative to another without any loss of quality. And then they'd take what's now your exact copy of your original camera negative, and that's the one that would become a work print. So that's the one they cut up. And that goes through the editing machine. And then once you've got your conformed print, they would then make because that's got little bits of sellotape all the way through it, holding it together. They then make a print of that, and that's then becomes the one that they use as the master to like duplicate to send out to movie theaters. That whole process sadly died away, but there's not really a way to like expand the image too much unless you were doing it at the copying from one negative into another. I think some of the machines would allow you to like zoom in a little bit. Not so much.
So it wouldn't be that it fit that screen and we're seeing the warp because we're watching it on a smaller. That wouldn't. That's what I thought the effect was.
No, I think it's more just natural lens distortion. Like you still have to correct for that sort of stuff. So even though I'm shooting digitally now for all still photography, every single picture that I take, I have to tell the computer specifically what lens I've used and have it correct for lens distortion. And when you were kind of printing pictures by hand, you couldn't do that. Like if I was just printing straight from the negative onto a piece of photo paper by hand, so like developing the negative and then putting it into an enlarger, if your negative couldn't quite fill the whole bit of photo paper you had, you'd have to literally move the negative, move the light that's shining onto your piece of photo paper closer to it to have it fill more. And you wouldn't really, in that instance, you wouldn't really lose resolution. So they may have been doing a little bit of that when they were copying between the different negatives, but not that I'd heard too much. I think most of the distortion that we see, and particularly the distortion in whip pans, is a kind of sign of the quality of the lenses they had at the time, and very early anamorphic lenses.
Tell me, how many podcasts can you get a history of cinematic lenses and the cum joke all in the same episode? We are versatile, baby.
All bases covered. And there's one thing I forgot to say when we were talking ninjas, and I'd be remiss if I didn't. For ages now, I've been trying to set up having a sit down with Keith J. Rainville It's a name that I don't know if you guys know, but Keith
no,
Rainville has an amazing website that please everybody go and check out called vintageninja.net.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
I know
maybe.
it.
When I was first starting to kind of get into real Japanese ninja movies, because after seeing Shinobi no Mono and falling in love with Raizo Ishikawa, really wanted to see more, like, because I could never find those movies growing up. We had pretty good access to Hong Kong movies, hardly any of the Japanese martial arts and kind of not really kung fu movies, but Japanese martial arts and action movies of the 60s and 70s. And there is an amazing grouping of those together on Keith's website. So he's an absolute sweetheart of a guy, and he's completely up for having a sit down chat with me, but my life just has been a fucking roller coaster the whole time we've been speaking. I haven't managed to make it happen yet. So Keith, if you're listening to this, I apologize. I will email you soon, but please everyone check out, if watching Here's the East leaves you with an inkling of wanting to see more Japanese ninja movies, which are
hankering for ninjas.
Well, that's what
in a way.
And that's what I need, because what's funny is
site, man.
When I was 7 or 8, it was the coolest thing ever. American Ninja, Revenge Ninja, all that stuff. Now, when I got older, especially like when you would rewatch it, the American Ninja movies turned into get your buddies around, have a beer. It's like a bad B movie now, but it's so like, it scratches that itch. It still has the coolness I can see, but it's a lot of it's the acting. That American Ninja, when I put that on like 15 years later, I was like, dude, this guy cannot act like at all. You know, and the Shogasuki ones, he's so amazing. He lifts those movies up a ton, you know. And some of them have some rough acting. But that's why it's so funny. It's like the cheesy element makes it like I said, scratches both itches of the ninja and the bad B movie. Like, so, you know, but I need more of I like, you know, Shaun, you said you started your Japanese journey this year. I can name, like, you have to name some, like, I've seen Street Fighter, The Ring, we're talking martial arts movies, and that's, you know, so, or not The Ring, The Grudge, right? I said
they're kind of both like
The Ring and The Grudge,
Okay, I've seen those, but like I've not. And bringing it back to Heroes of the East, the effect that gave me. But I have to say, though, when I would go to a grocery store, my mother be shopping, I'm 9 years old, I'm seeing, like we've always said, Shaolin versus Lama, Executioners of Shaolin. I wasn't seeing Shinobi and these weren't there.
No, never.
You know, what I'm desperate to speak to Keith about is how the fuck he first managed to start finding the Japanese stuff. I'm assuming there was a couple of like forums with people just trading tapes or DVDs back and forth, and a lot of them were out on DVD in Japan, but no English subs. Like, Japanese never put English subs on their releases, even to today. It's
that's
very
probably
rare.
You probably answered it right there. That's probably half the problem, right?
Yeah. So
unless a version of World Northern one to go and put it all on there for us,
which didn't really happen. So I think there's a couple of pretty good websites that you can, like jpmovies.com, which I think is not in any way legit. So make sure you've got a hefty ad blocker and lock down your machine from the relentless barrage of porn sites that will try and attack your machine.
It's like
and
LimeWire.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But I mean, it's kind of reads more like a sort of, you can just click and watch the movie on the site, but it's going to.
I meant how LimeWire would infest your computer with memory. I want to download.
There's a Cat 3 one like that, a site like that, and fucking hell, the amount of pop-ups on that is fucking nightmare.
I'd be remiss.
Constant shuriken attack.
Well, I'd be remiss. I have to mention this, like, as we come to the end here. So we go through the whole movie, and I think I almost didn't even I don't need to ask you guys this finale. It ranks. I mean, Masked Avengers. Oh my gosh, Masked Avengers really hits the weapons for me, and I love that. That ranks up there. I'm trying to think what else. Of course, I've said Drunken Master 2 for me a lot. There's so many, but this has something more than just fighting to it. It has, and I'd say something more than even the ninja. It's the fact that Lau Kar-Leung is playing the game too and bringing it back to him and to match him, and that little element where he pretends to be his wife. He's walking on, I don't know what they're called, those little, whatever the heck they're called. Eggnog, not eggnog, grape nuts. I don't know what it was. Whatever he's stepping on, you know.
Peanut shells, right?
I don't know. Something that fell from the trees So, and they're like a version of caltrops. Because when I used to have those.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. They're like going to be spikes that you kind of catch people's feet with.
Yeah. This is like because they're kind of still playing nice. They're not, because they're like in this, they're not going to kill each other. This is the closest, they get close in this a lot. You know, a lot of these, like if you're, but that little thing where he does the fake character and he gets swiped or he does the fake dummy, and then he gets swiped, and
Yeah.
that is such a beautiful exchange. And then it just keeps opening up. It keeps going. Then you're outside of Clear Lake or Clear Water. What's it called? Clear Lake.
Almost. They've got the first little bit where it's the setup of all the kind of straw men. And then then Yosaki Karata kind of runs away from that and is like,
Yes.
I'll meet you
Oh,
at Clear
when-
Lake. If you've got any guts,
okay.
you'll come. Or does he say that earlier on? I can't remember.
Well, in my head, I considered that whole section Clear Lake, but you're right. There's like a third part.
No, I think you're right. I think he does say at the end of the time when he's dressed up as a woman. Maybe that, because the English dub for this I've got a lot of love for because of that bootleg version.
Yeah.
I don't
Lost
remember
Chorus.
it. I don't remember the dub.
The
at
English
all.
dub's fucking great because I
Oh,
think
it's
it's
so
just
good.
after he's done like the time when he's dressed up, he runs away after the
Yes.
first time and says like, "I'll meet you
it's all- it's
tomorrow
like,
at Clearwater Lake. If you got
it's
any
kinda
guts,
off
you'll
it.
come."
Is it on the Arrow release? The dub?
what?
I think the
On
English dub's on
Source
the. I think
Oh
so.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
English
is.
dub, English
It
dub.
sounds good
Check
too.
it out because it's really good fun.
I
On the,
will.
on the old, on the bootleg I had, there was a bit kind of wonky. So like when he was saying, "You'll meet me at Clearwater Bay," it was kind of like
Yeah.
you kind of got a little bit fucking up in the audio, which just made it all the more sweeter. So yeah, I've got quite a lot of love for the English dub of this one because also the wife, when she's doing her thing of telling him what he's going to face next, she's telling him about Karate-san and says he uses ninjutsu, which is very sneaky. Which is one of my favorite dub lines as well.
Very
And then
sneaky.
she demonstrated earlier in the movie, like after he
that
kind of
scene.
bested her, she went away and dressed up as a ninja, and she was up in the kind of the rafters and dropping down explosives and letting him know if she'd used more gunpowder, she would have killed him.
Poison.
basically. And
Poison.
Poison.
did it
Yeah,
for-
that's right. Yeah.
That's my second that scene, and that's what got lost when I went to the dub a little bit. I was so tied to those. Went to the subtitles. I was so tied to those lines. It didn't say it the way I needed to hear it on that one, and it just like that scene. When I was watching them show each other weapons, I feel like I could watch that. I could watch a movie of that. And you remember when you're young? I mentioned video games a lot because this is the period when I was young. I mean, I still love video games, but like video games, and this was like when you're 10 years old, it was everything, you know.
Yeah.
But you know how it was like Sega Genesis versus Super Nintendo, or maybe for you guys, Mega Drive versus Mega Drive versus Super Famicom, I guess, on your guys' side of the pond.
Super
No, but Super
Nintendo was a
Nintendo
bit-
over here too, but it was Mega Drive. Mega Drive.
Oh, okay. So it like I had a thing that I was I was all with Lau Karlang and loving the weapons, but when I saw the Japanese weapons, I kind of was like, oh man, it like they look a little cooler, but I didn't want to admit it, you know what I mean? And that's how I felt like when I had the Sega Genesis and everyone's talking about like the colors of like, you know, whatever Act Razor and stuff. I was like, oh, like it's in grass is always greener, but I felt like I wasn't allowed to love when I was younger. It was just that stupid team mentality.
Yeah.
But I have to say now that whatever, who cares? Watching it, I think the Japanese weapons kind of trump every Chinese weapon, how it looks in that scene. Like when I'm saying like, it's really neat, but like even when they do the stars, each one, the Chinese one just seems a little more like sometimes feel a little more like decorative, you know?
And they seem clunky in a
Yeah.
way. The Chinese ones, I don't know why, they just seem clunkier.
Well, every guy in every commentary I listen to this always point out that this katana would just go right through that. I call it the Tai Chi sword, you know?
Yeah.
And that's always been a weird weapon to me because, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon felt like a magical version where, okay, that one's like they really like boosted it up.
Yeah.
But that sword always looked like it would just get like if you had a good pull, you could take that thing out almost. You know what I mean? It looked
weird because there's a couple of different versions of them, and the one that they're using here is like the heavier duty one that doesn't bend. But traditionally, even like the Tai Chi sort of straight longsword would have like a lot of flex to it.
Yeah.
And
I saw a lot of bend in that first one with the Japanese guy, though. I saw like
they've got the big. He's using a more of a broadsword, isn't he? When he's going up in the first one, or does he use the Tai Chi sword? No,
the broadsword's later. The broadsword's later. Yeah.
No, you're right. It is the Tai Chi sword because he does that incredible flip out of when he's getting out of the of the scabbard. But I think they're definitely weird. I mean, Japanese swords are kind of like supposedly second to none, though they did break, and you'll see it quite a bit if you start watching more sort of samurai movies. There's a kind of really great movie which was remade by Takeshi Miike called 13 Assassins, and
I've heard of that.
A group of dudes is going to have to defend themselves against like an army of hundreds, right? And before the fight kind of fully kicks in, they hide like spare swords, knowing that their swords are probably going to break at some point.
Interesting.
And then like, halfway through the fight, they run to kind of like where they've hidden them under like bales of hay and stuff and get their replacement sword, right? So they would occasionally break after a heavy battle, but
not if Sonny Chiba makes it for you, right?
No, not if it's a Hattori Hanzo sword.
Yeah, I think that's where I first learned about it because Kill Bill, or the one where they're talking about like the tinsel steel, like over and over. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like the steel's just melted over and over. Because I've not seen a lot of Japanese movies, they describe that's in Kill Bill, right? Where they describe how he makes the sword for her.
I
the
imagine
katana.
so.
I think
Yeah.
so. I don't know how much they go into the sort of the craft of it. But
Okay,
there is that
maybe
great-
I'm
it gets
misremembering it.
Tarantino'd up where he says like, if you on your travels you meet God, God will get cut.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesomely. And Sonny Chiba is one of my favorite performances by him.
Oh, so
Acting
good.
performance.
So
He's
good.
amazing.
So good.
Yeah, I'm
And
not sure where I've learned. Maybe it was on the commentary, but you guys have heard how they take like years.
Oh yeah, and just fold and fold and fold.
And in
There's
the
a
end,
really
it's like a
good-
minimum of $10,000 or something to get one or something.
yeah,
a
if it's
real
made by a real master. There's a really good
Yeah.
documentary about, because there was an amazing dude who did multiple movies made about him. There was a real life samurai called Miyamoto Musashi. He's the guy that sometimes, if you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, Rogan every so often will go on a flight of fancy where he speaks about him because one of his tattoos, I think, is Hattori Hanzo.
Cool.
And Hattori Hanzo wrote the book of not Hattori Hanzo. I'm getting myself confused. Miyamoto Musashi wrote the Book of Five Rings, which is kind of like almost like a samurai version of the Art of War. It's kind of like a series of rules for how to navigate through
I've heard
life.
of that. Yeah.
When he was really young, like had his first duel at like 12 and fought against a samurai using only some stories say it was a branch, some people say it was a wooden training sword, but anyway, killed the guy who was using a real sword and he was using a wooden sword, and he just cracked his head open. But he went on to have an incredible lineage of fights and kind of became much more philosophical in his older age and retreated to the mountains. And anyway, it's an amazing documentary that Mark Dacascos made for I think the History Channel or the Discovery Channel, where he wanted to retrace the footsteps of Miyamoto Musashi. So he goes to Japan and he goes all the way around the country, visiting the cities where he was known to stay, the places that still have shrines or statues to him. But at one point he goes to learn sword techniques from like a Japanese sword master, and he also goes to see a sword being made, and they speak a lot about the process and that.
Now I need to see that. Okay.
It's really good. I think it's still on YouTube, and if it's not, I'll hook you up because I've got a copy.
Yeah, link me up. That sounds
awesome.
It's really good, and Dacascos is like the perfect host because he's so super into it. He's so enthusiastic, and I was able to speak to him about that, and it's kind of.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you guys want to see a cool interview, you got to go to the
Please
Fanatical
do.
Dragon.
I think it was the thing that he was not fucking expecting. So we're there to talk about Brotherhood of the Wolf, and at the end, I was like, "I've got to talk about this documentary, man." He was like, "Shit, you've seen that?" It's really good. So yeah, everyone check out. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like Miyamoto Musashi Footsteps of the Warrior or something like that. I'll double check that. I'll if we can put our comments into before you post this episode, I'll give you the documentary name. You can put it into the description. But
okay,
yeah, amazing. But yeah, we're going into tangent upon tangent.
Well, let me ask you guys. So if we're bringing it back to the ending. Like, what's your favorite part of the ending? Because it's so multi-parts. Like, what sticks out? Because it's such a killer finale. I don't even have to ask you guys. I know it's up in your guys' favorite finales.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
I have a weird. Sorry, go on, Dragon.
No, I was just gonna say, I think partly for the weirdness of it and how well Karate plays it, I do love just the randomness of the Japanese crab technique, and how well formed that is, and how well he does the moves, because it could be so easily goofy as fuck.
Oh yeah,
but he kind of somehow sells it as being legit, right?
He has like a James Bond. He has like an inherent coolness to him. His look of his face and stuff. Yeah. So for him, I feel like it would take a lot to like get egg on his face. It takes a lot to make him not seem cool. You know what I mean? Like he has such like a. I don't know what you would describe it. Like when he comes on screen, he has a movie star face.
He's got completely. Yeah. And even when you see him not acting, I don't know if you've seen follow his Instagram. He's like he's how I want to be when I'm that age.
I know. Oh my God, his hair looks amazing. So he has gray, like beautiful.
Oh yeah, impeccably dressed.
Yeah,
he's a dude, man.
How about you, Foos? You definitely love this finale, right?
I love the finale. I have this weird theory where I know to me, what I'm about to say makes sense, but probably to everyone else it doesn't.
Take us there.
I think this film feels very 1979 and not 78. Now, I don't know if that makes sense.
You're speaking my language.
Because I think there's a kind of small gap that was leaped between 78 and 79. And I think the fight choreography of 79 is a very small step up from 78. But I think that step up you can see it in the fights.
Well, I was
think
going to say, I think it happened in '78 because when you see even 36 chamber, because I think the order was 36 chamber, Shaolin Mantis, because his head was always like shaved
Yeah.
during that period.
Mhm.
That's why he has the wig. But in the one commentary, he said he just came off of his cameo in like the smaller role in Shaolin Mantis,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
but if you watch like 36 chamber, like those early fights in that movie, even compared to like this finale, that's I'm like saying your point. That's why
Yeah.
it feels like 79, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I
This,
think it's
for
really
interest, this was released on the 30th of December, 1978.
Oh, there
really?
you go. There's your answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this film feels 3 days in the future when it was released.
Well, I think he kicked open the doors for it, you know?
It
Yeah.
may be. I just there's a slight pacing change and complexity
what you mean.
change between 78 and 79, and I think this has more 79 aesthetic.
So that finale, that brings it up for you, seeing all that.
Yeah.
in there
Oh,
too.
I mean, 79 is my year, so I love the idea of these films from 79. But yeah, I think this fight scene may be my favorite Lao Leung fight scene of
So
all
good.
time, which probably there's probably 3 of Lao Leung's fights in my top 5. I think this would be one of them. Yeah.
Well, like think of the Oscars. You know how that opening, and let's say an old Oscars will just have like a really solid opening, like a musical piece with the host, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And then the next year they're going to have to keep up in the by the time you get to the '80s, it's like they have trapeze artists, and it starts like you could feel the try hardness of it, you know.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say that about Lau Kar-leung, but I think that's why I have a little bit of, like, sometimes when I love all the 8 diagram pole fighter and legendary weapons. I love that, but sometimes it has that nature where they're trying to up each other so much that the scenes are just like boom, 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 you know.
Yeah.
This has that, like, where it has such a confidence. It has such a, I guess I would say, like in music, less, they say sometimes it's what you play between the notes, it's not all like it doesn't have a lot of noodling to it. It doesn't have, I have to impress you. It has such a perfect, it's like efficient in it getting to its points and all the nature. And that finale where I showed my mother it once, he goes, wow, it's like she was surprised it was going on and on,
Yeah.
and she loved it, but it just goes on just enough. And then I wouldn't call it anticlimactic. It's kind of such a curveball that's what happens. He goes in the water. You expect he's going to come out like a crab amphibian or something. Like he transforms, and then this little straw comes in. Who would have? And I think that's what gave him the confidence. Like, I got him now. You know what I mean? Like, and that is such an interesting ending. And it brings me to a question to you guys. Now, this is a problem with the dub. So you get to the finale, and this is a question. I'm happy I remembered it. So in this movie, there's a lot of confusion on who can speak Japanese, who can't. And they said, like, in some scenes they would have, like, whenever they're on that amazing shot in Tokyo where they have Kurata speaking to his wife, and they decided to speak Mandarin. I would like to unpack that a little more. I guess they would, of course, make it all be Mandarin for the the dub, so they understand it. But at the end, whenever Yusaki he's trying to translate for what Gordon Liu's saying, well, actually, he's not translating. He understands that some of those Japanese guys can't speak Chinese, so he's saying, listen to what he's saying. It's good stuff. So I guess the point is some of them, like, he can understand Chinese, and some of them can't. I think that's the point, because that's the translation thing. So basically what it is when Kurata speaks to Gordon Liu, they can speak to each other.
Yeah.
But when Gordon Liu is speaking to all of them at the end, Kurata has to.
He's the translator.
He's the translator. Okay. Yeah. But when you hear it on the dub, it's odd, because, like, when I had showed my mother, she's like, why are they both talking at the same time? It's kind of odd.
Yeah, it's a little bit lost in the translation. Sadly, because ultimately it's the fact that the main thing that wins over Kurata's respect is how long he can hold his breath. Right? It's not any of the moves. It's his breath control. It's like,
but also, like, slowed his heart down so much because he listens to his heart and it's like not there. You know, so it's like Gordon Liu really got his ninja game up to impress him.
Reading those books,
and finally grabs the sword, which he didn't take before.
Oh, so good.
Which is a great ending.
Oh, so perfect.
It kind of comes full circle.
Now, do you guys think there should have been a little bit of more of him and his wife, maybe just a scene or something to, I think the subtlety there, I had a pop quiz question for you guys, but Dragon ruined it early. You threw it in. I was going to say, what did his wife do towards the ending that let you know that there was a like they reconciled. Besides the fact she was obviously kind of like staying with him again.
Of the dressing.
Yes, like, but I didn't notice that when I was younger. I just didn't notice that. But yeah, she's suddenly dressing in Chinese, so that's the way.
Which I think also means because I wondered if he was doing that. I don't know if he was playing this sort of level of 4D chess, but I wondered if he did that partly so that the gag at the end, why Gordon Liu would know that it was a trick when the woman was running in. It was really kind of karate running into the dojo and then slashing him with a sword. How he would know that wasn't his wife running in was because
I don't
she
think
was
he
wearing
did know.
tradition.
Though,
No, but well, he had to ultimately because he had the feathers and stuff. He was.
I thought that was his backup plan.
He was ready for the attack, but she was dressed in like Japanese clothes rather than the Chinese clothes that his wife was now wearing. So there was there's a couple of different levels, but I don't know how much audiences watching that would kind of get it. I think at the time we were meant to think it's his wife because she's covering her face and stuff, and so I think we're kind of meant to we're meant to be tricked as if he was the same time as he's been tricked.
We're getting shocked, right?
Yeah.
And we're kind of blessed there wasn't a Heroes of the East 2 where they brought 8 more back. You know what I mean? Like, I like that. You know, I could see this with like Heroes of the East 5, like fine. You know, I just like, I could see, I'm happy Chang-Chi and Lau Kar-Leung didn't do that too much, you know? Like they didn't have to do like the horror style, like 8 sequels.
The only way it would have worked is if Kurata got back to Japan and wrote a letter that was misunderstood, and a whole bunch of Chinese fighters went over to Japan. And then
you know
Kurata
what,
got to
Dragon, I love that, man.
That's a great idea,
dude. I don't know. I think you just made your first emotion. What's the name of that going to be? Like, I guess it'd be a challenge of the Tai Chi master or something. I don't know what it'd be called, but yeah, in a way, and kind of, I think Jimmy Wang Yu would go on to like sort of like do that style of evolve that style of movie into even more of a Street Fighter 2 in live action type vibe, right? And kind of, I think that became Jimmy Wang Yu's kind of thing more than Lau Kar-Leung's thing. Lau Kar-Leung just moved on to other stuff, and what he had in store for us was Dirty Ho, which was like, holy fuck, because he just never sat still, right? He was always evolving and always never really liked to make the same movie twice. And the times when he was forced to do it, you can see how much he was railing against it. Even 36 Chamber, like completely upending when he came to do Return to the 36 Chamber, and it's like not Gordon Liu's not even going to be the same guy now, right? He's just going to be a guy who's scaffolding the roof.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you, I love Return to the 36 Chamber.
It's the same, but it's a very different movie. It's much more into like. He found a way to make it more of a comedy that still had action, and then the third one's its own thing too, which always gets. I love the third one as well because that's
the one I've watched the least. I only watched that once back in the day. I haven't rewatched it.
It's much more one of Sao Ho's chances to shine more than it is Gordon Liu's.
Way more comedic
character. Yeah.
It really ramps up the comedy. It has great fight scenes.
Do you think it obviously gave a good job of letting us know that they did reconcile though? Because that's kind of like the cliffhanger at the end. Do you feel that they got back together and it was all good with the?
Yeah, I felt like they did.
I feel completely. Yeah.
You
mean him and his wife, or him and the Japanese in general?
No, him and his wife. I felt like
him and his wife were already reconciled half.
Okay, the fact that she was right. You're right.
She's already on board with him. Yeah.
But it just didn't do the. It didn't tie it up like the style, but it was good. Like that's a good thing with the Shaw Brothers movies. Like when the movie ends, the end, you're there. Like, I remember watching Minority Report. I love that movie, but they had like 20 minutes at the end that just ruined it. It just went on and on. Maybe that's like an American trope where they have to tie every end up, and you have to.
Lord of the Rings. That end of Lord of the Rings.
Rings.
My God. There's so many endings because you've got to wrap up all those characters. Where I think this time round, his point was ultimately that the misunderstanding was now finally put to rest, and there's no need for them to fight. And I think, in as much as it maybe would have been, what do you do? Like, do you have him and his wife just embrace, but they're already back together? Do they jump up and high five each other?
You answered it. You know what? You answered it. And anything on the beach or something. You're right. It would have made it less if it had like a. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But an all around just an incredible experience. One that is consistently always entertaining anytime that you put it on, and not every show is like that. There's a couple that we've already spoken about here that our perspectives has shifted slightly from the last time to watching to when we watched it for the pod.
Yeah, this one's a guarantee, top tier. It'll always be top tier.
Like when you rewatch the Dragon, did it hold up?
Oh,
Like,
completely. Yeah. And it's one of these ones that like I kind of know that it's the ones where I'm not, because I know this movie really, really well. We all know this movie really well.
Yeah.
So sometimes there can be a tendency to get distracted, and you'd be on your phone a little bit. But my phone was beside me and didn't look at it once.
Nope.
Didn't pick up. I was just you get locked in because it's just a joy. It's just an
what's feeling is strange at the end, and I don't know if you guys. I feel like honestly, when it ends, I could just start it over and watch it again, and that's probably the
easy. Yeah,
and that's the best like selling point for this movie. Some movies you want to watch and they're so intense or something, you know what I mean? But this just, man, it's the pacing, it's beauty. It's a like chef's kiss for a kung fu movie.
Yeah, as simple as this film is, like the action itself is a lot to take in. There's there's so many fights and some of them quite lengthy. There's a lot to like absorb and go, oh shit, that was cool. Now, so it's a very easy film to like go on YouTube and just watch a bunch of the fights. It's yeah.
And this will be my one controversial statement for the pod. Maybe not to you guys, but I think this is a better Lau Gar-lung weapons movie than Legendary Weapons of China. Like I think 100%. The weapons work.
100%. I agree. I agree.
That's in here is much more kind of enjoyable to engage with.
Agreed.
Partly by the fact that we're seeing Japanese versus Chinese, but also just the way that the fights are structured.
Yeah.
Where and it's maybe Jason, I think you maybe nailed it early on. It's less try-hardy than some of the stuff in Legendary Weapons, where literally he's really trying to go out of his way to make the definitive weapons movie.
Or to wow an audience, like kind of just like,
Kind of, yeah. But by that point, I kind of feel that he'd already been a little bit beaten to the punch by Sammo. Like I still think that The Odd Couples may be a better weapons movie or a better sword v spear movie than some of the stuff that we saw in Legendary Weapons. And I think that's a better showcase for Lau Kar-wing.
Yeah.
Well, as we ended, I do have a question for you guys. So, excluding the finale, what is your favorite fight scene?
From the other ones.
I'll tell you mine while you think about it. I think mine is the Bruce Lee-esque guy.
Okay.
Because those still shots, if you get Gordon Liu with that trisectional staff, I mean, that is like those still shots. We've seen them. I just want that on my wall. It's like, and strangely, I thought the one with the sai was really, really good. I thought that was like really, because the sai is such an odd weapon. With that, with the butterfly swords, those two I felt were just such a nice middle period of that. Because the end ones, have you seen? Because of the pacing, they kind of like start speeding them up, and there's not as much like they kind of get through them a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think my vote would be the Bruce Lee-esque guy versus him with the trisectionals.
Probably, but I really do love that spear. I love the Japanese. The actor that's playing the Japanese spear guy's got a real intensity to him. He's really great face, and so I love that one. The nunchuck one is great, and it reminds me of something that Karata-san says in his interview that is a beautiful way for us to close out, where he says that he gifted Bruce Lee his first pair of nunchucks.
Well,
wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I did hear that, I think. Wow. That's awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
Given the legacy that Bruce Lee has.
And Karada also said that he was impressed by Bruce Lee's handshake, by how strong it was, and also how little facial his face remained so calm while his hand, I guess, was like breaking. Like it was like, but you guys have seen it, meet like a construction worker out here and you shake it, it's like, oh man, that's like granite or something. It's like, But yeah, Shaun, so what's your favorite outside of the
3-section staff is my favorite weapon. I always take delight in watching amazing fight scenes with 3-section staff. And this one is up there with some of the best, I'd say. Nice appearance from, I think I read somewhere that it's Lau Kar-wing that's spinning it around his back.
No, I think it's Lau Kar-lung, I thought.
Oh, is it Lau Kar-lung?
Usually in the commentary, every time it showed, it's kind of obvious, like it's just that little alteration. You could see something in the height and everything. They just kept saying it was Lau Kar-lung doing it, but you could be right.
I stand corrected. That probably
wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, because I think certainly from the way that he was having to show them what to do through the moves as well. So I think he was probably equally as adept with some of the Japanese weapons too. And there's a couple of flips that Karata does in the last fight. That I suspect are not Karata. That's probably Sauho. If I had,
and I wonder how they knew both the commentaries didn't skip a beat whenever her kimono opens.
About body double.
Well, they kept saying body. Oh, that's not a body. Like I was like, wow. I guess they read some book. I don't know how they knew instantly, like that it wasn't her.
There's a size difference. I think a little bit. I think because there's the shots where you see her face. You probably get quite accurate beat, but the other earlier on shots, like gotcha. I think that's somebody who is a little bit more more endowed.
Maybe it was the other woman that Shaun ran into.
Yeah, that's right.
She was subbing in like, oh man.
I doubt she would have been born at this point.
Probably. Oh man. All right, guys, that was a great one. That was fun.
Amazing.
Great episode.
It was a long one today.
We
That's
got
our longest one
yes.
ever. Yeah. And people looking at Shaun here, I guess it's dark where you're at. And
It's
I
getting
can barely
darker.
see you. You're like going into the abyss. Wow.
Yeah.
It's ninjutsu.
I know,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
I'm gonna drop a smoke bomb in a minute and just disappear.
I was gonna put my hood up. I got my covers on.
Yeah, it's getting dark here.
You want to take us home, Dragon?
Yeah, thank you very, very much to everyone. If you've made it to the end of this, we salute you for listening to our ramblings.
Absolutely.
Come back again next month when we have something incredible planned, which is going to be, I'm not going to tease the title, but I am going to say that it is another intervention episode where we're showing Jason something that he has never seen before.
That's
and our
right.
first time visiting a country that we have not had a chance to do so far. So please come back and join us. Same Ninja time, same Ninja channel, sometime next month.
See you guys later.
Toodles.
Los Polos.